So anyway, the person that we're going to have tonight for the local, let me hold on a second. I have to go back to my notes. The older I get, the more notes I need. So sorry about that. Okay. Okay. So tonight we have Genevieve Arnold who is the seed program manager from Theodore Payne Foundation in Sun Valley. And for those of you who may not know where Sun Valley it is, it's in the San Fernando Valley in the northeast corner. And this is a fabulous place to find out about everything related to California native plants. This foundation was established in 1960 and has been thriving ever since there, right off of Glen Oaks and Latuna Canyon Road. TheodorePayne.org is the website, and we will put all of this information in the chat. And just to make a note right here for that, I want to say that if you have questions, to please put them in the chat, and then I will feed them to Genevieve as we go along. And at the end of the program, if we have more questions, we will ask them at that time as well. I'll try to get good opportunities to ask questions. And then I mentioned at the beginning that we were going to give away these cards that you can see here on my background. And so I'm going to ask 4 different people for 4 different numbers right now to find out who those winners are. But we're going to do that at the end. So just be thinking of your numbers. Paula Caton, I want you to pick a number between 1 and 12. Don't tell me what it is right now. And then Amanda, I want you to also pick a number between 1 and 12. And then let's see. Chris Griswold, you can pick a number between 1 and 31. You're going to tell me when I ask you what that is, okay? And then let's see. John Delfino, you too will pick a number between 1 and 31. Okay, so just hold on to those thoughts until we get to the end. So tonight we have a local source, Life Linked to Land, a Coastal Perspective, which draws upon how California native plant gardens and landscapes restore habitat in urban environments.
Pretty good size.
On the regional scale, how can we further respond to the urgent need for efforts to build habitat and preserve biodiversity more effectively? One important way to go local and include ethically sourced plants from surrounding wild habitats for use in urban and wildland interface landscapes. We will learn about the benefits of native habitat gardens and locally sourced plants with an overview of Theodore Payne Foundation's local source initiative and Long Live LA Conservation Seed Bank. This presentation will also include profiles of some locally occurring coastal native plant species and how they can be incorporated into the landscapes. So Genevieve Arnold, as I was saying before I got a little off the topic there, is the seed program manager for Theodore Payne Foundation. And she came to us from the California Botanic Garden. She was trained there at the plant propagation department and the seed. Oh my gosh, Genevieve, seed. Oh, tell him.
Conservation.
I see conservation program, and she trained there at this place, which is the now known as the Claremont Graduate University. It's the California Botanical Garden is part of that. She did that for 10 years before she came to be the seed program manager at Theodore Payne. So without further ado, we're going to introduce Genevieve Arnold, and she can tell you a little bit more about Theodore Payne Foundation and give us her presentation. Genevieve, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Well, thank you so much to Michael and Mary for inviting me to be here tonight. I've really been looking forward to it, and I'm so excited to talk to you all about locally sourced plants. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with Theodore Payne Foundation, we are a nonprofit native plant nursery with a seed conservation program, education programs, outreach programs, all kinds of ways that we do native plant conservation and help educate the public and interact with community to make habitat and environment more resilient in Southern California. So I was really excited that Mary was going to run the raffle for the cards, the flashcards. I have tabbed my own set of flashcards that I'll be referring to tonight. So you'll be able to see how useful they really are to learn some of the basics about native plants. And I was glad to hear that questions will come in as we go. I really prefer that. I like the interaction. I like learning from people. I like it to be a conversation. And so I look forward to hearing your perspectives, and I'm just excited to learn more about gardening and habitat in your community. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen.
Okay, so people, if you do have questions, just raise your hand first, and then I'll call on you to ask your question, just so that we don't interrupt Genevieve.
Okay, great. So this first slide, we do have our annual native plant garden tour coming up. I understand that Pacific Palisades Beautiful has its garden tour as well, which I was really thrilled to learn about. So ours is April 16th, 17th, and 18th. It is a virtual experience that will include about 8 gardens, and you'll be able to see the gardens through the seasons, how they progress, and it'll have interviews with the people who take care of the gardens, so you can learn more about really what it's like to be hands on the ground and how they created what they're going to share. There will be discussion panels as well as other interviews. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're interested, you can go to nativeplantgardentour.org for more information. And it's not moving ahead. Why is that? One moment, please.
Maybe try start slideshow. See slideshow here?
I can't see. One moment, please. I apologize. Okay, let's try this again. Mary, do you know how I can make the little bar at the top disappear? Oh, there.
There you go.
Now we're rolling. I apologize, everyone. I too am still getting used to the Zoom universe. Sorry about that. So I am broadcasting from Sun Valley here tonight. And to start, I just wanted to acknowledge the Katenamook, Serrano, Chumash, I can't see the whole screen, but the original stewards of what is now Los Angeles County, we are committed to uplifting the names of these lands and community members from the over 200 California First Nations who reside alongside us and have generously shared their traditional ecological knowledge. So I'm going to talk about life linked to land. I was really excited when I went to the Pacific Palisades Garden Club website, and I read that part of the mission is that you recognize the natural environment supports health and well-being, and that the California coastal canyon and foothill landscapes are a heritage to preserve in their rich diversity of species. I was just so thrilled when I read that because I thought, okay, these folks are on board with this. And, you know, I think Theodore Payne Foundation and the Pacific Palisades Garden Club and Pacific Palisades Beautiful have parallel missions. So it's really going to be exciting to speak to you all about locally sourced plants, life linked to land. I am going to have photos of coastal plants there from your area. And I wanted to point out that on some of them, they have Tongva language words for the plants. And for that, I would just like to thank my colleague, Brenda Kyle, who shared the work that she has done as a resource with me to include these words on this presentation. So here we have two bulbs, the soap plant and the Humboldt lily. And if there are specific questions on plants, please fire away. And Mary, I can't see the chat, so you're just gonna tell me if there's a question, correct?
Yes, I will.
Great, okay. So we're gonna talk about locally sourced plants from the coastal perspective. And just to start, as you know, this is near Santa Ynez Canyon, and I really liked that shot because it absolutely shows how most of the coast lives very adjacent to wildland areas, and in fact, in this case, completely enveloped and ensconced in it, and how this is an opportunity to support that habitat. Here is Tuna Canyon, where if you love white flowering ceanothus, get out there because there are hundreds of these trees in bloom, the big pod ceanothus. Of course, the ever iconic giant coreopsis at Point Doom. Some people call them the Dr. Seuss trees. This was from a super bloom a few years ago. And then these two photos were both taken on the dunes at Topanga State Beach, and they really interested me because this California coastal sagebrush was just a single plant on the dunes mixed with non-native plants, and this bush sunflower was also a single individual. And I found it intriguing because I had guessed that maybe a bird brought the seed down from the hills behind. So this just shows you that coastally, native plants do have a range from the mountains all the way to the shore and are adaptable. And as most of you probably know, things often have a more compact form on the shoreline than they would up in the mountains. So I'm going to start by placing us. Placing where we are in Southern California. So we are a biodiversity hotspot, and most of you probably have heard that phrase, but what it means is that we have a high percentage of plant life found nowhere else on Earth, making it irreplaceable. And we have 30% or less of our original natural vegetation remaining, making it threatened. And biodiversity hotspots only represent 2.4% of the Earth's surface. So we are incredibly unique, incredibly special, incredibly precious, and incredibly threatened. So California has more plant diversity than any other state in the nation at approximately 6,500 species. And the reason for this incredible diversity, there are a few reasons, but one is our transverse mountain ranges. So the rest of California has north-south running mountain ranges, but here in the southern region, we have the Santa Monica Mountains, the San Gabriels, the Verdugo Mountains that run east to west. We also have an incredibly dynamic and young geology that's always changing. And so, as you can see, these transverse ranges create very high ridge lines and lots of interesting topography and dramatic drops to valleys, sometimes in the course of a quarter mile. And as pictured here in Santa Ynez Canyon, you can absolutely see the dynamic geology. You can see the dramatic elevation difference. And in this photo alone, you can see a wide variety of plant species. And here's a little a Live Forever taken in Griffith Park. And as you can see, very unique, very specific microclimate. Our area is also extremely threatened by the impacts of urban development, land degradation, and the loss of wild plant populations. So in addition to the loss of wildlands in just a spatial, physical sense, as you can see here of this photo of Griffith Park, near Griffith Park, the development is breaching further and further into the wild areas. You have, with the development comes the replacement of naturally occurring native plant populations with non-native landscaping and the subsequent presence of exotic invasives that do escape into wildlands. This is Pennisetum, pictured in Bronson Canyon. And then of course, I think all of you must know the Arundo donax, which is you know, a problem in Topanga Creek. It is very difficult to eradicate, and it also not only competes with native plants for space, but takes up the water resource and also absorbs a lot of the water from the water table.
So Genevieve, they have one question. Is the big pod ceanothus always white? What is the lilac or blue one called, and which ones have the spines?
Great questions, and that makes me really look forward to a slide I have later that kind of outlines a couple of your local ceanothus, but in short. The big pods generally are white, I think, when the flowers are new, but when they, over time, I think they can fade a little bit. The kind of sky blue California lilac with the green bark is called green bark ceanothus, Ceanothus spinosus, which is also in your area. And the one with spines is the chaparral whitethorn, I believe it's called, the Ceanothus leucodermis, if that helps. But we'll revisit ceanothus a little bit later. Did that address the question?
Does that address your question, Rondine?
Okay.
I'm muted. Yes, it does. Thank you. Sure,
yeah. The ceanothus are just incredible this year, very worth getting out onto the trails and checking it out. So lastly, you know, we're in mega drought, we have increased fire frequency. So the effects of climate change combined with the effects of continued urban development into wildland interface areas, all of these things combined make us a biodiversity hotspot and pose real threats to the health of our natural habitats and environments. So, you know, we are home to one of the rarest, most precious and threatened ecosystems in the world. And we can work together to strive to understand and promote the treasure that truly are these ecosystems that we inhabit and share, and our inextricable link to the land that sustains us and supports our survival, sustains our well-being and vitality, and makes us who we are. So tonight I'd like to propose that built landscapes are not disconnected, external, and finite incidents, but meeting points between ourselves and the land and ecology around us that create a relationship with the land well into the future. And so Theodore Payne Foundation, as a native plant nursery, particularly in a highly threatened biodiversity hotspot, took this into consideration. And so we asked ourselves, how can we help? How can Theodore Payne help in the conscious creation of sustainable landscapes that support this threatened biodiversity in our region? So this quote I really like: nurseries have a key role in conserving the gene pool of native plants. So our locally sourced plant initiative, I'll get more into it, but in brief, it is a program where we collect seed in wild areas that neighbor built areas. We grow plants from the seed, and we also store seed in our conservation seed bank for the future. And we provide these plants to the public. We provide locally sourced plants because they are highly resilient, they are climate adapted, they establish well, they're incredibly drought tolerant, and they are co-evolved with pollinator populations in the region. And I'll get a little more into that. So Theodore Payne Foundation wanted to help, wanted to take on this responsibility and this role in conserving native plants. So here we have bigberry manzanita in Topanga State Park and ashy leaf buckwheat, right on the shore at Topanga State Beach. So what we plant in public and private spaces actually matters a great deal. In fact, a study out of Chicago Botanic Garden determined that 1/4 of urban areas consist of private gardens. So that's very exciting for individual people. There are things we can do. We can plant native plants. We can plant locally sourced, resilient, habitat connecting native plants, and play a personal role in contributing to the longevity and health of our local environment. So what we practice at Theodore Payne Foundation is ecological horticulture, so that distributed restoration, when our locally sourced plants go out into the region and go into the ground, it's a distributed restoration. And here are some local favorites. One of my absolute favorites, the canyon sunflower. And here you have the canyon sunflower co-occurring with a sedge. And when I'm out in the wild, I really like to look at pairings. And I know Michael is a garden designer, and I'm sure there are other garden designers in the group who also like to look to nature to see what goes together and what thrive together. And here we have Solanum xanthii, the purple nightshade, looking amazing. This is not one that people commonly think of for home gardens, but it is incredibly resilient and provides beautiful color and habitat. Going back to Topanga State Beach, I discovered that the little stairwell that goes from the parking lot to the shore is sort of bound in and hugged by a lemonade berry hedge. And so I'm going to pull up I don't know if anyone can see me, but I'm pulling up the flashcards and looking at the lemonade berry page. And it is touted as it can be a long-lived, fast-growing, and formally trimmed hedge. And even if you trim it as a formal hedge, it still provides food and shelter for birds and small mammals. And if you allow the flowers and fruit to form, then it's also supports pollinators, of course. So TPF's local source initiative. So when you go to our nursery, or you see on our online store locally sourced, anything with a purple tag that says local and shows a mountain range is a locally sourced plant. Not everything we sell is locally sourced. We are working on creating a better interpreted display in our nursery so that all locally sourced plants are in one spot, to make it easier for people to go there and say, well, I live in Hollywood, so what's going to be a plant that was locally sourced there? You'll note that we do not put exact localities. We do that because this program is designed to support local environments, and we we don't wish to, invite or encourage or condone everyone in the region going out and collecting plants. With our locally sourced initiative, we enter into official permits or memorandums of understanding. It's permission from landowners, and we also partner with organizations such as the Friends of Griffith Park to run this program very carefully and very thoughtfully in such a way that harms neither individual plants nor plant populations. I'm not going to get deep into our ethical protocols, but we do apply methods that are the most current methods in the conservation field, and we don't collect from the same plant population multiple years. So we're doing it in a very sustainable way to bring these plants sustainably to the public. So what is a locally sourced plant and how does it integrate natural and built landscapes? So again, a locally sourced plant is one that was grown from a seed that was collected in local wild areas. The seed carries genetic diversity, and when we do make seed collections, we use methods to capture highest genetic diversity because that produces the most resilient plants. How would you use it? First of all, here's some white sage in a highly urbanized modern building, and I just want to point out that a lot of perception thinks that native landscapes in urban areas are just like taking something from the wild and then mirroring it and plopping it in the ground in a landscape. But I pose to you tonight that they can be very formal and they can fit any kind of architecture. Here you have a bungalow in Northeast LA with a toy on, and going back to my adored lemonade berry hedge at Topanga State Beach. And then here's Ascot Hills Park in Northeast LA. You can see we have these areas. They may be open land, but wow, it's extremely degraded. Exotic invasive grasses, probably fire has come through before, and putting locally sourced plants into a park like this could really make a big difference in creating habitat connectivity and restoring urban landscapes. So what do locally sourced native plants do? They support local and regional biodiversity, and they support plant and pollinator relationships. Here you have a quail in amongst some deerweed in the San Gabriel Mountains. And so a lot of these pollinator relationships are specialized, and one of the best examples is the chaparral yucca, which has an exclusive relationship, or rather the chaparral yucca moth has an exclusive relationship with the chaparral yucca. It only pollinates on that one plant. And I know that my colleague Erin spoke to you all about the monarch milkweed relationship as well. That's another example. So these are just some other examples. And here you have a cedar waxwing. If you do plant a toyon, you will have cedar waxwings coming through your yard every February to eat the berries. Bridging fragmented habitats. So here you have just some images of various denizens of the region. And I'm going to go ahead and point out this photo, not to highlight the exotic bamboo, but going back to this sort of topography that we have. Looking across, you have a very high hill in Griffith Park, which is a natural area that then slopes down to a valley, which is covered in homes. So you have a wild area. Imagine what it would be like if people in these homes, just a few people planted even one locally sourced plant. You would be bridging that patchwork habitat. You would be providing pollinator resources and supporting supporting wildland-urban interface. Here you have the LA River, which everyone knows is highly degraded. And in the next few years, there will be rollouts for restoring the LA River. Not only are they going to, break up concrete in some areas to put back soft bottom, but there will be public recreative spaces, parks put in adjacent to the river, which will also serve as habitat areas with locally sourced plants that will support not only the animals, but our human communities as well. Because going back to your mission statement, we're well aware that as human beings, our health is extremely dependent on the health of our regional biodiversity. This was taken at the Starbucks courtyard on Pacific Palisades Drive, and here's what struck me about it. Clearly, you need this retaining wall. Absolutely. Clearly, you need a green hedge to decorate it up a little bit. But this difference between what's behind the wall, which is natural area, and then the courtyard, well, just imagine if that hedge inside the courtyard was actually one of those lemonade berries, shored up and trimmed up or espaliered to make a very formal hedge. You would then be extending that wild habitat with, a plant that would draw in pollinators and birds. Here are a couple fun photos just to show you that native plants are tough as nails. Native plants are not going away, but they do need our help to stay and to continue thriving. You have a native buckwheat on the photo on the right. Unbeknownst to these drivers, there's just a really tough as nails little guy growing out of the concrete there and doing pretty well. And then the other photo is a sacred datura growing in the extremely disturbed soil of the LA River. This plant, I think the city comes and chops it back, but it comes back every year with no supplemental water. So native plants are extremely resilient. Yes, locally sourced plants, plants that are resilient and well adapted to our climate. The two pictures flanking the middle picture were from a previous garden that I created. And what I did was I purchased locally sourced plants from our nursery that were from my neighboring mountain range. And I did just a casual observing trial with it. And so I planted the plants, and then I decided I was going to drought stress them. And I cannot tell you how blown away I was by how resilient they were, how vigorous they were. And these turned out to be long-term plants in that garden that did extremely well. And there are going to be some academic studies in the upcoming years to try to gather hard data rather than just observational data about the true adaptability and climate resiliency of locally sourced native plants. Having said that, as gardeners, we all know that there's incredible value in relating with our own garden, studying our gardens, and understanding our gardens. That helps us then understand our surrounding environment and landscapes. So just as Theodore Payne Foundation asked ourselves, what can we do to help? We know that a lot of people in the region are saying, okay, well, what can we do to help? And there are a lot of, advice out there ranging from put down concrete because it doesn't take water, but of course we know that's not water permeable, to put down astroturf because it doesn't need to be watered. And I'm very empathetic. I understand that some people do not have the time or ability to care for a native, a full-fledged garden or even a lawn. But again, the astroturf does not allow water through, and also over time, it does release toxic chemicals into the environment from the plastic. When LADWP had the lawn removal rebate, a lot of folks did opt to put the gravel down, maybe with a couple plants here and there or some cactus and succulents popping out. better than a thirsty lawn, but not addressing the habitat issue, the fragmented, not providing that habitat connectivity, and also not addressing like the, reflected light issue, the heat island issue. And then of course there's the California friendly option, which I think is great. Mediterranean climate plants that do adapt well here, that are drought tolerant. But to that I pose, why not also put some natives in there and take California friendly to California supportive, California celebrating, California forward plants. And, I am a firm believer in hybrid gardens. People grow vegetables, they grow herbs, they have favorite plants. A lot of people love lavender. I think that's great, but why not mix it with native plants that provide the pollinator habitat? So the nuanced world of native plants. What's in the middle here is a native monkey flower, just the straight species that's naturally occurring, and then all around it are cultivars. And the cultivars can either be deliberately cross-pollinated hybrids that were created by a human, or naturally occurring in the wild, like a sort of fluke or outstanding appearance that someone then selected and propagated vegetatively after that. So with our local source program, you've heard about some of the things that we're trying to do, and now I'm going to tell you some of the things we're not trying to do. Again, we're not trying to be militant. Gardening is for beauty, it's for fun, it's for life, and it's not about judgment. It's about support in many ways. And we see ourselves, it's our responsibility to educate, but we also see ourselves as collaborators with, with everyone in the region. Excuse me. And with our clientele who come to us for native plants. And we want to be collaborators that give you the best information we can. For some people, a cultivar is a good option. Maybe they live in the urban core, maybe their favorite color is pink. Great, it's better to plant a native plant than no native plant at all. But if they're on the fence between a locally sourced native plant and a cultivar, and we can provide the locally sourced native plants, we'll say, hey, maybe this is the best option for you because this is going to be a more resilient plant and it's going to support pollinators much better. In fact, there was a study out of the Chicago Botanic Gardens stating that 25% of cultivars had floral or leaf traits that differed from wild plants in ways that may compromise their ability to support pollinators and other wildlife. The same study said that native plant nurseries need to ensure relevant information follows plants through the supply chain from source through sales. So we were interested to read that because that's exactly what we've been doing. And our local source program did start in 2012, and we've been growing it since then. So we are trying to address these things and make the information accessible, make the plants accessible to help Angelenos and everyone living in the region make informed planting decisions from private yards to larger landscapes. So going past native to what kind of native? So these are a couple formal urban landscapes with native plants by Josh Link of Ecotone Studios. And in the process of creating this presentation, I did speak with a couple designers that I know and asked their take on native locally sourced native plants. So bear with me, I'm just going to share with you what their input was. So Josh had this to say: locally sourced plants for the horticultural trade is the logical end and the beginning of the road to acknowledging that humans are not separate from nature. Our history is riddled with being horrific neighbors to other species. As we acknowledge the damage we have done, we make biodiversity a design priority. The local source initiative represents a feeling of hope and optimism that we can be helpful and useful members of our ecological society. Even incorporating locally sourced plants in small ways within a broader landscape makes a difference. Every single project is an opportunity to address biodiversity through natives. I also spoke with Andreas Hessing of Scrub J Studios. These are not his designs, but he had this to say about locally sourced plants. Plants are individuals, just like you and I, adapting and changing to the conditions in their space. From the contractor perspective, I know that a locally sourced plant is the smarter choice because it is already adapted and will survive. As a designer, it becomes important not to affect a pre-existing wild population and to take into consideration the health of the ecosystem and what can be done about that. When I look at a landscape, I'm projecting 10, 15, 30 years down the line. What about this space? The more local stuff we can get in there, the better. Even one plant is helpful for pollinator relationships. So, quick note, I know that I've noticed that a lot of the structures in the Palisades are apartments. I myself live in an apartment with a balcony. You can absolutely garden with natives in containers. You can absolutely put a locally sourced plant in a container and draw pollinators to your space. This is right here is black sage that I planted in a pot on my balcony 2 years ago. The first year it had 1 flowering stem, and this year it has 5. So I'm really excited about it. This is a garden with a lot of natives and a lot of locally sourced natives. That's Griffith Park adjacent. But here you see the person has their beloved non-native succulent display. And that's perfectly okay because they're taking into consideration all their needs for their garden. The plants they love, the beauty, the plants that work for their space, and habitat. You can have it all. So just a quick note, through our local source initiative, this is a holistic program, and you've probably started getting that. It's about partnerships, seed conservation, and regional collaboration, as well as providing locally sourced plants. So one of my favorite books, The Plant Life of Southern California, Dr. Philip Rundell from the university there on PCH in Malibu, who's a chaparral specialist, he studies that, had this to say about conservation. Threats to biodiversity remain acute in Southern California. Continued habitat loss and fragmentation threaten the long-term existence of species and pose the greatest threats to biodiversity in this area. Here's the key. Effective programs to preserve and enhance biodiversity in Southern California must rely not just on public agencies, but on public-private partnerships as well. So what I really like about that is I'm not just talking here about Theodore Payne Foundation's relationship with, civic entities, state entities, landowners, but relationships with Theodore Payne and you, the public, individuals, and individuals' relationships with those land management agencies. I think for too long, it's all been separate, it's all been silos, it hasn't been interconnected. But I love this quote by Dr. Rundell because it shows that we all have to we all have to be collaborators, especially in this time of a biodiversity crisis. We all have to work together to make this situation better. So quickly, this slide is what I call a field to freezer story. We partnered with people from the Friends of Griffith Park to discover this population in Griffith Park of blue-eyed grass. It was hiding in near a landfill along a gas line. There's the pipe. In amongst an extremely degraded area with a lot of invasive exotic grasses. It's sort of like an extant population, sort of a population that's remaining, even though the greater population has been patchworked and fragmented and it's hanging on. So we scouted it and during the spring, and then we went back in the height of summer on one of those 100-degree days and collected the seed. And once we collect the seed, we go back to the foundation and we use our specialized equipment to process the seed. These are US standard sieve series sieves. This is a seed blower used to separate the chaff from the seed. And then we use microscopes to check the seed for viability so that we know what we're putting in our seed bank does not have parasites, that we're storing high quality, viable seed. So, yes.
So Maria says she got Salvia Winifred Gilman from Theodore Payne, I guess. And it says, which is not doing well in my garden. Almost all the branches died. Why? I live close to the ocean. Lantana isn't doing well either.
Okay, so yeah, Mary, this conversation sounds familiar, huh?
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is that Salvia Winifred Gilman, it's a cultivar of the Salvia clevelandii. So first of all, it does not like clay soil at all. Okay, so even like heavier soils, it doesn't like. It really likes well-drained soil. Secondarily, it does not like to keep its feet wet. You do have to water it carefully, but if you overwater, that doesn't make it happy either. And if you water during the summer too much and you have heavy soil, that's when you start to see things like die off or the branches breaking, because the plant is essentially rotting out because it can't take up the water and it's just sitting in that heavy soil. So I don't know if any of those circumstances apply to the person who posed the question.
Oh, let me see. Hold on.
But while you're looking, I'll add that
yes, it's me, and you are right. You are right.
Okay. Yeah, and you know the reason,
you know, my soil, it's yes, not very good. Like 3 feet down, I have a heavy clay.
absolutely. And so even if you amend that soil, the roots are just going to go down through the amended part and eventually hit the clay. So for you, I would recommend maybe a black sage or a purple sage, which I'm going to talk about soon here, which are more adapted to a wider variety of soils. And I'm sorry to say I don't know much about lantana, so I can't speak with any experience or expertise as to why that might not be doing good. But I would just say, you know, don't overwater. That's one of the things.
You know, I got it because it attracts butterflies.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, maybe someone else from the group can chime in on the lantana. So another piece of this holistic program is our Long Live LA Conservation Seed Bank. So once we enter with a partner to get permission to collect seeds for the local source plant program, what we agree to do is we store portions of the seed in perpetuity in our freezer, which is long-term conservation storage for the landowner. So if a fire ever comes through, if they're doing restoration, if a researcher needs the seed, if they're even just creating like a new garden space in Griffith Park or something, they come to us, they say, what do you have? I say this, this, and this, and I hand over the seed back to them. So this is a really cool, there's no monetary exchange. It is a collaboration. And again, the people who plant locally sourced native plants in the ground are also collaborators in this holistic loop. And just really quickly, to put the seeds in the freezer, we dry them down to a very low relative humidity, which basically forces them into a state where there's no cellular activity and they're dormant. And then we take weights and counts on everything. We have complete field data, we have photos, we have GPS coordinates, and we know exactly how many seeds we have and of what species in our conservation seed bank. We also do seed regeneration, where we grow the seeds in small pots and then plant them out on our grounds so that we can then create second generation genetically locally adapted seed and offer that to the public. So we do offer locally sourced seed as well as plants through these programs. And this was just one cool seed regeneration project we did. We got some funding after the Latuna Canyon fire of 2017 swept through. We went into our neighboring Latuna Canyon here. We did a lot of monitoring on fire followers, and then we proceeded to collect seeds from them. And while a lot of the seed is stored in our conservation seed bank, we also planted some of the plants that we grew out on our site so that we could then create more locally sourced seed to offer to the public. So here you have the fire poppy, which is a well-known fire follower. And then this one was really exciting because in the horticultural trade, the farmed seed for the foothill poppy, which is smaller than the California poppy, is known to be a hybrid. So this enabled us to offer not only a locally sourced plant, but a true to species plant as well. And the whole fire follower issue and fire adaptability is just one more way in which the plants here are totally adapted to our very specialized environment. One thing that you may be asking relates to what we're calling hyperlocality. So here you have the San Gabriel Mountains, you have near Mulholland Drive, Calabasas area, you have a monkey flower growing in a very specialized habitat in Griffith Park, you have the incredible topography of Red Rock Canyon, and then you have a view down to the Topanga Village and Topanga Canyon at large. So maybe you're saying, well, I live in Red Rock Canyon, so is it okay for me to plant a locally sourced plant that was harvested from over a few hills closer to the coast, or that was maybe harvested from Santa Ynez Canyon in the Palisades? And right now, the best answer we can provide is it's better to get as close as possible. So we make a really big effort to cover a wide swath of area. We do Western Santa Monica's, we do Eastern Santa Monica's, San Gabriel's, Verdugo's, etc., Santa Susana Mountains. We're collecting from very disturbed areas in the urban core, and then we're also collecting from areas that are a little further out, like where you are. And I know, Michael, earlier I wasn't sure how much we had collected from your area, but once I got deeper into it, we actually do have quite a few locally sourced plants from the lands where we do have the agreements with the landowners in that area. So yeah, short of doing pop-up stands around every bend, we tend to focus on different areas every year, and slowly but surely over time, I'm trying to get a really good representation of a wide area of Southern California, and we continue to grow the program. So I have no idea how long I've gone on, but I think now it's time for us to have fun talking about how locally sourced plants fit into the landscape. And this is the fun part where we talk about how to garden with these plants. And ranging from container garden, here I'm experimenting on my balcony with a coastal sagebrush in a pot, to Northeast LA. I know a lot of people plant native plants with edible gardens, which is fantastic because you want to bring in the pollinators. Well, just imagine how many more pollinators you would bring in with that co-evolved locally sourced plant. And then of course in public and park spaces in the region. So I'm going to start with Toyon. This is LA's official native city plant. And this is just one of my very favorite plants. I'm starting with trees and shrubs here. Some people call this a tree, some people call it a shrub. Here you can see it in a public park space, hedged back very, extremely, but they've left the top hang over the trail, which I love. And this is actually a private property in Old Topanga Canyon. This was a naturally occurring toyon on the property, but as you can see, they've built around it to keep it there. They do trim it, they prune it, they water it. You can absolutely do all those things to a locally sourced plant. Again, it doesn't have to be just like it is on the trail you hike. You can make it your own. It's still going to provide all the habitat value. You can trim it, you can keep it tidy, etc. So this plant gets a lot of play for its red berries that the cedar waxwings love in February, but I wanted to show you how pretty the white flowers in spring are. And additionally, when you're out in the wild, you'll always know it's a toyon because it has these very serrate serrated leaf edges.
So Genevieve, we have another question. It says, are all the plants we're reviewing now going to be good for our hyper local Palisades habitat?
Yeah, so good question. Thank you for asking that. Yes, so I did some research. I spent some time on the ground. I enjoyed hiking. I enjoyed taking photos. I did some scouting for future seed collection. Michael will be glad to hear, so that we can provide some more locally, hyper-local plants to Topanga. But all these plant profiles, thank you for asking that. I'm sorry I didn't specify that, are locally occurring species to you that absolutely can and will benefit Palisades gardens. So the answer is yes. Bay trees. This is one of my absolute favorite plants. It's very fragrant. It is a bay. You can cook with it. They suggest that you use like a fraction of the amount of a leaf you would buy from a conventional bay, you know, a spice jar in a store, because they're very strong. These get quite large. So, you know, this would be for somebody that has a large space or maybe a public space. This was taken just on a roadside in Topanga Canyon. And here it is again in Santa Ynez Canyon. And you can see some of this dynamic geology and microclimates I talked about. And these often occur in groves that are mixed with other tree species in the wild. Here you can see, here's the bay tree in the front, and they're co-occurring with oaks, toyons, other trees. But they absolutely make a great garden plant if you have the space. They don't want to be planted on an open plain in full blaring sun. They do like to be partnered with other shrubs and trees for a little bit of protection. You can have this in a pot, believe it or not. I had one in a pot. It will grow slowly. It will never reach its full capacity. But if you love bay trees just that much and all you have is a pot, just get a very deep tree pot and you can do that. Sorry, our lights go out periodically. So now we're back to the ceanothus, the California lilacs that someone asked about earlier. So I've highlighted here the big pod ceanothus that you asked about. Again, this is in Tuna Canyon, and this is a I liked this picture on the right because it's naturally occurring this way, but this one is known to make a great hedge, and you can see why. It's doing it naturally in the wild next to this pathway. And they also make great hedges because they smell beautiful, they attract pollinators, and they provide privacy screen. Here you have that green bark ceanothus, which you will always know because the bark literally is green. It's very distinctive. It has more of this, I'm so sorry about that, powder blue flowers as opposed to the white ones of the big pod ceanothus, and maybe a little smaller. They can get somewhat large. And then here is the close-up of the inflorescence of the big pod ceanothus that has these spectacular yellow anthers, beautiful form. I love the ceanothus. And there are ceanothus that are ground covers, there are mid-sized shrubs, there are large shrubs. Pairings, deerweed and California buckwheat. Inland here where I live, these you see together growing frequently in the chaparral. Deerweed is one of the primary butterfly habitat plants that you can plant. Buckwheat as well. It's also excellent for birds. They eat the seeds. And here you can see the buckwheat is flanking bike racks just fine. These are both incredibly resilient plants that require very little water. And to put the coastal perspective on it, two kinds of buckwheat. Again, this is the ashy leaf buckwheat, and this huge stand of it was there also on Topanga State Beach, which I would be shocked if someone planted it on the dune right by the sand. I personally, based on my observations, believe it to be naturally occurring. I could be wrong on that. But I wanted to zoom in because this is a common coastal buckwheat in where you guys are. This is such a beautiful buckwheat. It has these really refined gray small leaves and these gorgeous flower clusters. And you do not have to have this big monster stand of it that's going to take over. The buckwheats are really great for gardening because you can manage them to your space. You can have an ashy leaf buckwheat. You can have a locally sourced ashy leaf buckwheat. You can keep it trimmed. You can maintain it so that it's functioning in your garden space. And then, of course, the coastal buckwheat, which I'm pretty sure I also saw in Topanga and the Palisades. I would have to do further ID, but it's most widely known to occur on the south coast, where it supports the endangered El Segundo blue butterfly. But I'm pretty sure that it also occurs in your area, and we provide that one as well. That one we haven't provide locally sourced, but we are working on it. And then shrubs. So the bush sunflower is a big one. I saw that. You see it all along the sides of PCH. It's tough as nails. It's very durable. It can reseed vigorously and get very large. So that is one you do want to consider. Maybe for if you have a large space or it's a community or school garden, wonderful. If you have just a more concise urban space, maybe this one isn't the best choice for you. It also goes summer dormant, and you can just cut it back and it pops back up full of flowers in the spring, and it's really important insect habitat. Here you have my favorite again, the canyon sunflower. This one is really good for partially shaded spaces and is so local to California's coast, especially Topanga, Malibu, Santa Monica Mountains, Palisades. In fact, I tried to grow it in an inland garden once in a shady spot, and I just couldn't really get it to go. Of course, I fully claim user error on that. I'm sure I did something wrong, but this is a great example I like because it is so adapted to where you live. If you have partial shade in your space, this is a beautiful plant, and I love the foliage just as much as the flower. The gooseberry is going off right now out in the wilds in your area. This is a spectacular plant that has these shiny, leathery leaves and these gorgeous, gorgeous red plants. This attracts hummingbirds in a big way. And then when it forms these berries, the birds also come and eat those. I really love this plant. It's like an elegant surprise. It has texture, it has form, it's unusual. It would be a beautiful sort of highlight plant, maybe in an area that's like a walkway, that's a recessed area by a door, something like that, where you can really enjoy observing the animals and enjoy the beautiful form. And then the snowberry is a lower growing shrub that's a great ground cover for shade. It's all over the place out there right now, flanking the trails. And what I really love about it, no, I didn't trip and fall in this picture. I just got down, and it has this sort of movement to it that is really beautiful and can be beautiful paired with other plants for, texture, color as the light comes and goes. These two are kind of shade to partial shade, and the other two here are can take full sun. Sage. So going back to the sage questions, here I'm highlighting black sage, and here's a locally sourced black sage just doing extremely well in an urban yard. Here's the flower, and here it is in my pot on my balcony doing very well. And part of my theory about why it's doing well is because it does have like a semi-dormancy in the summer. So it doesn't have, it's not just constantly growing. So if you're doing container plants, a partial summer dormancy can actually be a benefit to the longevity of your plants. And then there you can see my flowering stems that I'm so excited about. Hummingbird sage. This is great for part sun to sun. It does occur, Solstice Canyon has big stands of it, Santa Ynez Canyon, it was right here on the trail. This is an amazing plant. This is a beautiful plant. It spreads slowly into a patch over time. You'll hear around that it takes shade, but I personally think that it's more of a part sun to full sun sometimes to really thrive. The leaves are edible. The leaves are fragrant on all these sages. So if you're into fragrant gardens, herbal gardens, the sages can't go wrong. Purple sage is very common and frequently seen in the Santa Monicas. It's different because it has a narrower leaf with kind of this gray tone. And if you want to see a good example in Topanga of one that appears to be planted. There's one adjacent to the center where the Topanga Historical Society is located. And there's like a coffee shop there and some like a gourmet food store. And you can see they've put purple sage around and it's doing great. The sages are wonderful. They're drought tolerant, they're fragrant, probably one of my favorite plant genus. Annual wildflowers. Michael, I thought you'd enjoy this slide. We have collected seed of annual wildflowers in red rocks, particularly. And I said etc. because the cardinal catchfly is not actually an annual. It's actually a short-lived perennial that has dormancy. I planted one of these on my balcony in a pot, and I loved watching the hummingbirds come to it. The Turkish rugging is one I'm so excited. We collected seeds last year, and we're going to be able to offer plants and seeds over the next 2 years. I love this little plant. It's a ground hugger. It takes full sun. It's tough as nails, and it is bright pink. We collected the bird's foot trefoil on a sort of dry creek bed adjacent area in Red Rocks Canyon, but this one adapts readily to conventional urban gardens. It can reseed and spread vigorously, but it's actually a very good butterfly plant. And it kind of has a long span as an annual, so it can fill with fluffy green filler late into the season, which is important. We've collected local tarweed, cliff aster, and all kinds of clarkia, a couple of Botas clarkia and speckled clarkia as well from Red Rocks Canyon. So you guys have a lot of, your area, you're so lucky, if you don't mind my saying. It's incredible. The plant diversity is incredible. The way people care about the environment out there is incredible. And just the plant diversity you have, as you know, as per your mission statement for your garden club.
Genevieve, we have another question.
Yeah.
Someone's asking if the hummingbird sage would be happy in sun inland.
So if you're truly, truly inland, I would say like either a protected sun or a part sun is preferable to full open sun. But the photo we have had back on that other slide is on our property here at TPF, and it gets full blaring sun a good 6 hours of the day, 5 to 6 hours.
They're in Ojai.
What's that?
They're in Ojai.
Ojai gets really, really hot, doesn't it? I think you could try it in full sun, but if I were doing it in Ojai, I would try to plant it on an area that's almost sort of like adjacent or like like a border area, maybe partially protected by other plants. Maybe if you can plant it around some rocks, sometimes boulders can help keep the roots cooled down. They call it like a nurse plant situation, where maybe it has, it's near a low growing shrub that helps protect it, and just be prepared to water. Part sun is going to be easier for you than full sun. So in the balance, this slide is just about another benefit of our locally sourced plant program. So as many of you have heard, there is a lot of problem with foraging and poaching these days, where people who maybe aren't aware, they're innocently doing it because they have a relationship with our local environment and our local plants. And I wholeheartedly support that, and I understand it. But what we're trying to do is sustainably provide these plants so that people don't have to tap the wild areas to direct collect wild plants that are then going to harm the locally occurring wild plant populations. One prime example is the Dudleya. I'm sure you've all heard about the poaching that's been going on in our region. That's very frightening. I myself have been out in the field and seen, it was in Red Rocks Canyon, actually. I saw, you could tell it was just plucked right out of the rock. You could see because some of the leaves were still on the bottom, and clearly someone had just pulled it out. So what we do is we go out and we collect small amounts of seed. We do not remove removed plants, and then we grow them out to provide locally sourced plants. So here's a lance leaf dudleya that I'm looking forward to potting up for my balcony. And these guys are attract hummingbirds too. This is mugwort. If you're like me and you love herbals and having native plants around you to sustain a healthy lifestyle, please don't collect those plants in the wild. And TPF definitely wants to help people obtain these plants, create kitchen gardens, create herb gardens, plant them in a community garden so that you can harvest them. Or even like me, here's my year 2 of a mugwort in a pot. I have not started harvesting leaves yet. I'm gonna wait a couple more years till it gets enough growth. But here it is in the wild in Santa Ynez Canyon, which is just breathtaking. And then lastly, maybe some of you heard about, oops, sorry, spelling error. It's Bronton's milk vetch with an N. In Topanga State Park, there was an unfortunate incident where some of this is an endangered plant. This is federally listed. It was raised because the agency that was clearing the area did not know. But this is to show you the benefit of seed banking, conservation seed banking, and the local source plant program. While I did not have seeds from this particular population, up further in Conejo Valley, through an agreement, I did collect some seed from one of the last known occurring populations of Bronton's milk vetch right near a housing development. And so subsequently, we were able to store the seed for that landowner in perpetuity so that when they need it, they'll have it. And then we can grow out some plants too. So this local source plant program, I'm going to go back to this, idea of holisticism. It is done in a way that's with care and with thoughtfulness, and in a way that we want to boost our local environment and make sure that these native plant populations keep going while still making them available to people. So that's it. This is my sources page for anyone that's interested. I won't linger. There's a lot on there. In closing, so our local source program did start in 2012, but we started tracking it via computer when we finally got with the times in 2016. And just since 2016, we've put 10,000, over 10,000 locally sourced plants out into our region. And these are ethically sourced plants. These are sustainable plants. These are habitat supporting plants. So that's really exciting. And these are plants that enabled individual people to know that they're supporting the environment at that level. And of those 10,770 plants, 71 unique local species were represented. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Here's our website, and also I'm accessible. I love talking to people. I love learning from people. So please, there's my email at the bottom. Feel free to email me directly with any questions you may have. And I sure hope I didn't go way over time.
No, you're doing great.
Okay.
I think that you need to turn on the lights in your room there so we can
Yeah.
see you.
Hold on.
Oh, there we go. I probably need more too. But I don't have any more.
Let there be light.
I'll
There she
send
is.
the email address out. It's
so it's GENNY. G is in George, ENNY at theodorepayne.org.
here, I'll type that.
And our website is really, I think it's really neat too, because it's interactive. And we on our online store, we have filters where you can say, oh, I want a ground cover for shade, for coast. And then it filters it and brings up suggestions. We have a native plant database. I really recommend you spend some time on our website. It also has some history for those of you who are wondering who on earth Theodore Payne even is. He was a man that came here from England, a young horticulturist at the turn of the century. He fell in love with the California native flora. He noticed even back then how quickly the native plants were disappearing. And he took it upon himself to promote these plants, to get them into cultivation, and to ensure their longevity for existence into the future. So the work we do here is in his legacy of sustainability.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Genevieve.
Thank
Now,
you.
does anyone else have questions before we do our little raffle plan? Or shall I say an opportunity? It's really not a raffle.
So I'd just like to point out that the Theodore Payne Foundation is an industry leader in posting their online plant availability, which is really important for people who live 40 minutes away by freeway to find out what they actually have before you take the long drive. And it's also a lot of fun for window shopping and browsing and blue sky wishing what you might want to have in your garden. So you can just toggle back and forth between their online availability and their native plant database to see, you know, will this work in my garden? Do they have it? Do they have as many as I want? And so on.
Appreciate that, Michael. Thank you.
Yes. Chris Griswold.
I do have a question I've been wondering about, and maybe, is it Jenny or Genevieve? Genevieve?
You can call me Jenny, that's fine.
Okay, Jen. So this can only be a speculation on your part, I think, but having moved to the Palisades in the 50s, and the entire, and almost an acre on a hillside that was covered in natural shrub, etc., that was dangerous because it harbored tarantulas and ticks and snakes, and it wasn't pretty, and it got brown, and it didn't look like Connecticut or Seattle or whatever it was. And so our whole mission, my whole family's mission, was to remove that and replace it with nice plants. My husband jokes about the third generational war about against sumac. Now, I'm allergic to it. It could be poison oak or poison ivy for me, which is how I got out of clearing the hillside for the fire every year when I was a kid. So now that I'm a convert and turned our, water heavy English garden as much as I could get it to be back into something that was native and Baja kind of, that could take the heat. I'm blown away. I am blown away that Theodore Payne could come here in the 1800s and recognize all the stuff that I'm, mid 60s and, suddenly starting to understand. You take away the food and the for all our flora and fauna, then what do we have left? How did he get it? That's my question. I don't know if you can answer it, but I want to ask that because I wonder about it a lot.
Well, first of all, I love your story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really enjoyed that. And I like to hear people's history and journey with native plants. And just to let you know, a lot of people are allergic to laurel sumac. It can be a skin irritant. And just to let you know, I am empathetic. I mean, as you know, there's so much poison oak around, and I never go hiking in your area without a hat, and usually a net covering. And then, of course, the minute I get home, I throw everything into the wash because there's so much possibility of ticks and poison oak. So I understand that when that's your home, your yard with your family, that you need to maintain it in a way that works for you. And I just loved hearing your journey back. So thank you for sharing that. Really cool. So here's what I think about Theodore Payne, and I love that question too. So he came here in the very late 1800s, and around that time was when, a lot of the colonization was kind of ramping up, and stock animals were brought here. And to accommodate those stock animals, grasses and mustard were planted. And so, you know, I don't know if many of you have heard that at one time there used to be poppy fields like all over the San Fernando Valley. The explorers that came here from Spain wrote about it, that it was just, they were just on fire, so to speak, with this orange poppy. And I think that, so Theodore Payne, when he first came here, he was a horticulture apprentice at the, for Madame Majeska, who had, she was an eccentric woman who had a property out in Santa Ana, actually, and he was a horticultural apprentice there. So he already knew that this was what he was doing. But I think that he happened to come here at a pivotal time in history where the changes were not at the point where it was just starting, but they were picking up speed. And I think he was just a person that loved plants so much and fell in love with our flora so much that he noticed it. And from what I understand, unfortunately and extremely sadly, it didn't take that long for the drastic changes to take place at that time. So also, you know, a lot of horticulturists are also erstwhile botanists. And as all you know, a lot of gardeners are also erstwhile botanists and horticulturists. So I think that most people who like to look at plants notice, if they look at the same area over time, notice the changes. So I don't know, that's my theory. Pivotal time in history.
Excellent. Does anyone else have any questions for Jenny?
Well, I think just another point about Theodore Payne is that he wanted people to plant things that would thrive in their gardens. And so he noticed the native plants thriving without any help from people whatsoever. And he said, you can't get any more low maintenance than that. Why don't you try these local native plants?
Also, I think it was a time of great collecting. Anything was sort of an English hobby. And so wherever Humboldt went or whomever it was in the 19th century, they were sending samples back to England. And it's my understanding that the English love Ceanothus. Now it's not native or anything, but it's exotic. So so when rhododendron made its journey from the Himalayas to England, and azaleas from North Carolina to England. So it was all part of this great 19th century finding and naming and classifying and collecting stuff. And he was part of that energy.
That's exactly right, Pam. Thank you so much for saying that. And he was a contemporary of the people that started the Huntington. He was a contemporary of Susanna Bixby Bryant, who started the California Botanic Garden. You know, Lester Roundtree, who was a famous local female field botanist. You're exactly right. I'm so glad you pointed that out. It was that time in history. But one of the things that was different about him was some people at that time would wild collect bulbs, for instance, and then turn around and direct resell them. But what he would do would be to grow out the plants and sell the second generation, make available the second generation stuff. Yeah. But yeah, thank you both, Michael and Pam. Those are both great points.
I have a question as far as shipping. Is it correct that your site, the site says that only at store pickup? There's no shipping involved in anything now. Is that correct?
Partially. We will ship seeds, books, merchandise. We do not ship plants. Plants are available only for pickup order. But again, we do ship seeds.
And how about t-shirts? How about t-shirts?
Oh yeah, we will ship. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And then we have another question here that says, are there native ferns available? Barbara Hance.
And I'm glad, Barbara, that you asked that. We do offer native ferns from the giant the chain fern, the real big one, to the smaller leatherleaf ferns, to the sort of ephemeral polypodiums. I'm sorry, sometimes I lapse back into botanical, to the maidenhair. And out on my traverses preparing for this talk, I saw tons of ferns, and that was really exciting to me because it's part of the diversity in your area and in the Santa Monica Mountains. We don't offer locally sourced ferns because we do not do propagation by spore. Propagating ferns is an extremely complex process that involves tanks and humidity and stuff like that. But we do offer just ferns that are not locally sourced, yes.
Someone also, thank you, Jenny. Somebody wants to ask you to repeat the title of Phil Rundell's book.
Absolutely. And that book was co-authored. It's The Plant Life of Southern California. And that is a cool book. I highly recommend it. And I just, he was with the Institute of Environment and Sustainability at UCLA. But what's the other school out there in Malibu? The
Pepperdine.
Thank you. Gosh, I can't believe one moment, please. I can't believe I blanked out on that. But The Plant Life of Southern California, and it's part of the UC Naturalist series, or it's part of a series put out by the UC system. They're wonderful books. There's I highly recommend that one to start, and then there's Plant Life of California Mountains. They have a whole series.
Cool.
She'll be back. Don't worry. There she is.
Sorry. Oh, Dr. Rundell's quote that I read you. I don't know if some of you. Large. That quote did it for me. And donors, we need to be storing. I'm just really inspired by the knowledge and education and ideas of a lot of these people that know our environment so well.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions before we do our little opportunity thing?
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go to Paula first for her number between 1 and 12.
Paula, you're
Gotta unmute.
muted.
Okay. Do you want me to give you the number?
Yes, please.
7.
7?
7.
Okay, 7. All right. And then John, what's your
They're the
number
best.
between 1 and 31?
25.
Okay. So now, does anybody have a birthday that is July 25th? Raise your hand. Nobody. Anybody have? Okay. We'll have to pick another number between 1 and 31. John?
27.
July 27th, anyone? Amanda's got to be close. Amanda, when's your birthday?
December 27th.
Oh. Okay, does anybody have a birthday in July?
I do. I have a birthday in July.
Okay, let's see. How many people?
July 9th.
July 30.
And yours was what, Susan?
July 22nd.
Okay, I think that you're the winner. Okay, so I think I have your email, but would you send an email to Packpel
Sure.
Garden Club at Yahoo, not the Gmail, because that's still on the auto Zoom thing. So send it to Gmail, and we will send you out a copy of the flashcards. Okay. So now Here.
My flashcards.
Amanda, give us your number between 1 and 12, please.
I was going to go with 7 too, so now I'm going to go with 3, which I now know is March. So good luck to you, March kiddos.
Okay, and then we have Chris Griswold to pick the 1 to 31 number, please. Got to unmute.
Oh, you unmuted me and I unmuted me, which
Sorry.
that's okay. I also picked 25.
Okay, so that would be Jim Jager, and he is not here tonight. So we can't offer that to him because he's not here. So is anybody's birthday March 25th? Okay, do you have another number, Chris?
17.
Why did I know you were going to pick that?
Really?
It came to my head. I don't know why. Okay, everybody, March 17. Ed, when's your birthday, Ed?
Our daughter is March 17th. Mine is in February.
She's not here, is she?
No.
No.
We can't count her.
How about
Anybody
St.
else
Patrick?
17? Chris?
St. Patrick.
No.
Whose birthday's in March? Anybody? All right, Amanda, you're gonna have to pick another number.
I see Lucinda just said yes, though. I think her
Wait,
birthday is March.
Lucinda, where are you?
I'm right here, March 5th.
Okay. All right, we're gonna award you the winner of the second one.
Thank you.
So since you're a member of our garden club, I will get your address from there. Unless you want to give it to me.
I guess get it from
I'll get it from the our little club manual.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now does anybody else have any questions for Genevieve or for any of us?
If you like to buy that booklet, can you buy it?
Yes, it's available at the Theodore Payne Foundation website at theodorepayne.org.
Okay.
Under books.
And
They're not books. They're flashcards.
No, they're flashcards, but it's in the bookstore region. Jenny?
That's right, Mary. And we will ship them as well. You can order them for shipping.
Okay, and then there's another thing in the questions here. Oh, Mike Terry saying several species of ferns are native in our shady canyon bottoms, especially next to waterfalls, which we all know exist at Temescal Canyon there.
What's the question?
They wanted to know about native ferns.
About the species? Or
no, I think they were just asking, the question that you did answer before, which was which ones were the native ferns.
To the hills, to a waterfall, pretty much everything you're going to see fern wise, I could be wrong, but is going to be native. The maidenhair fern is the one that has the small round leaves that sort of looks like it's spilling over. The Polysticum munitum, which I don't know, Michael, maybe I'm just really flubbing this one up, but there's one that kind of hangs down off the side of the cliffs. That's, not like a full, it's more like, what is the word I'm trying to say? It's more snaky. That one's native. Help me out here, Michael.
Yeah. Well, the Polysticum munitum actually will grow up away from the streams a little if they have some shade, even up into the coast live oak belt. You'll see them popping up. So they're actually among the ferns, one of the more drought tolerant ferns, if that's not an oxymoron.
Yeah. And don't they have a summer dormancy too that helps with that?
Yeah, if they're in a garden that gets watered, say weekly, they'll stay green through the summer. But much less frequently than that, they will go summer dormant, and then they'll surprise you again in the spring when they pop up.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I saw a lot of those polysticums in the past few weeks. They're really vigorous this year. And the
Okay.
maidenhair fern is going to require more water. That's probably one that you see close to the falls. Yeah.
Perfect. Now, does anyone else have any questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that as my first exposure to Theodore Payne, but also to Palisades Beautiful and the Pacific Palisades Garden Club, this has been a pleasure just to sit with all of you who are interested in the same kinds of things. And I really do believe that we can evolve the thinking here in our community, because if somebody hears all of this amazing stuff, why wouldn't they want to be a part of that incredible natural diversity? And I'm just really excited about it. And I want to thank all of you guys for welcoming those of us from Resilient Palisades.
Oh, you're welcome. We're glad to have you. And then Amanda, please send us more information about you, because we can include announcements in our newsletter for you as well.
Great, that would be wonderful. Yeah, we're really looking forward to launching these campaigns. I'll work with all of you, really excited.
Okay, great. We look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any announcements that they want to make? Mike, Terry?
Like what?
I don't know. Well, we're working with the gardeners
I guess,
for our garden tour.
yeah, well, I guess that I could say that the Garden Club and Palisades Beautiful have co-sponsored this event. And as part of that, we're sponsoring 2 scouting expeditions for the Theodore Payne Foundation to go out and find areas where they might do future collections of seeds of local native plants, ethically, of course, with permits, of course. And this is a program that anyone can support if you go on the Theodore Payne Foundation website and you look at the seed accession program, and you can support it at various levels depending on how far you want to go. You can support scouting expeditions like we are. After that, collecting expeditions, and then after that, propagation and all that good stuff. So Amanda, to your point, there are a lot of ways for different people to get involved in the things that they're most interested in, they're the most involved in, and help good new programs. It's still a young program, but help good new programs like this really get some traction and get these local natives out into the local communities where we can provide these way stations for the wildlife to sample of the nectar of the flowers and pollinate them and feast on the seeds before Jenny gets to them.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Maria.
Yes, I'm talking about being active and to have the membership, because we don't meet, we don't get together. How do you consider that when it's due? I don't know details because,
Oh, are you saying our membership directory? We didn't issue one this year because this year's membership wasn't.
Exactly.
We didn't do a membership drive this year, but we are going to be starting back memberships starting in July. And we'll put out more information about that. But for everyone who is registered for this event, with your permission, we'll add you to our interested individuals in our mailing list as far as emails are concerned. And next month we're going to have I'm sorry, I can't remember the woman's name who's going to be coming here, but she's actually the founder of Rose Story Farm in Carpinteria. Baruta, do you have the details, please?
But how do we pay the dues?
Just 1 minute, Maria.
Oh, we'll be doing a dues announcement, dues drive in the late
July,
spring, early, asking for your payments promptly so we can get the book organized and out in the fall.
Yes, Pam is our membership coordinator, but we will announce more about that next month and in our meeting in June, because we aren't able to accept new dues until July because that's the beginning of the fiscal year. So Baruta,
the name of the name, if I can get a word in edgewise,
I'm trying to get a word in edgewise.
There you go.
Her name is Danielle Hahn, Hahn, Danielle.
Okay, so do you want to tell everyone here about what's going to happen for May?
Well, she'll be speaking about the Rose Story Farm, and it's a beautiful location up in Carpinteria that I forget has 30,000 roses. And she doesn't, it used to be open to the public, but it isn't now during this pandemic era. But she will be speaking about how she and her husband started this beautiful rose farm. Everything roses.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I went last week to two nurseries, Matilda Hod Nursery in Moore Park, and then we went over the hill to Otto and Sons. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, Otto and Sons is great. Well,
Yeah.
the owner spoke to us a couple years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah. Great.
Yes, so next month we will have Daniel Hahn.
They're not native though.
Yeah, well, not everything can be native.
It's okay. It's okay.
They did have California roses, but that was the only one.
Well, Matilda Hod Nursery has a lot of native
A
plants.
lot of natives. And
They're
that
actually
was
a good
wonderful.
source to sort of, another thing you have to do if you really want to get some diversity of native plants is once you've gone through the 800 different varieties that Theodore Payne Foundation has, you can go further afield and get a few others from Matilda Nursery and Tree of Life Nursery down San Juan Capistrano and Las Politas, 4 hours drive away. You know, it's
Mike,
an
maybe you
adventure.
can make us up a list of those.
Actually, Gretchen Arnold, who is a member, and she lives right down under me, was emailed me about, she got her blue-eyed grass at Tree of Life on our trip 2 years ago, and it's just filled in. It's just wonderful.
Wow.
So.
Okay, well, Mike, maybe you can make a list of those ones that you noted, and Pam, maybe you can collaborate with him on that.
You
so
know,
that we can put that up on the website for everyone.
Sure.
So,
yeah, there is
in terms of next month, the meeting will be. Let me just check really quickly here. The date.
Somas. So it's kind of in between.
It will be May 3rd, Monday, May 3rd. So that's the week before Mother's Day. And I do believe that they have their website as Rose Story Farm is up. And so you can read about it in advance. You will have an email that will go out about this program. And so everyone will have an opportunity to join us here on Zoom. And we really appreciate that everybody has hung with us during the pandemic to do this meetings by Zoom. Currently, we will not be returning to the Women's Club for this year, and we're waiting to find out what's going to happen for the fall. But I guess at this point, they haven't determined that yet. So for right now, we're still going to be here on Zoom. And Genevieve, thank you for a wonderful presentation this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And good luck in your expedition. And we look forward to hearing about what your results might be. And perhaps you can send Michael and myself an email if you'd like to come back and report on what your findings are, if you would like to do something like that.
Oh, cool. That's a great idea.
Excited to have you back.
Yes, I'd love to.
Talk about the, what do you call it? The exploits of your expedition.
I don't know. Pam was describing some people that it would be hard to live up to. The turn of the century collectors.
Oh, God. You sound like you're right in there with them. You sound great.
Yeah, just wear a pith helmet.
Yeah, there we go.
Right, exactly.
And Baruta, would you like to tell anybody anything about Malibu Orchid Society while you're here?
I'm gonna go.
And their meetings on the 20th of April?
You'll hear about it soon enough. I'm working on it right now. I've just gotten an email from our speaker a day ago, so
Okay,
let
and
you know.
what's the topic gonna be?
Brazilian orchids.
Okay, so if y'all are interested in Brazilian orchids, send an email to Pacific Pac Pal Garden Club at Yahoo,
It was Brazilian.
and we can send you information about that because we're always looking for new members in the Malibu Orchid Society. And
Thank
I'm
you.
also a member of that as well. Barita is the president of Malibu Orchid Society, and John's a member. I'm a member. And we have actually a couple of other garden club members that are part of the Malibu Orchid Society too.
What is the date again?
It is April 20th, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. You know, and so
Thank you
if
for
y'all want to go
mentioning
to
that.
Brazil, I'm sure it's going to be a great meeting.
He's a wonderful speaker. His name is Ron Kaufman.
Ron Kaufman with a K, Kaufmann.
Will we get the link
Well,
through?
you can send me an email. Send an email to pacpalgardenclub@yahoo.com.
You want some beans or something?
And we will get you there. Genevieve, of course, you're invited to send if you like as well. And anyone here also, you know, not just garden club members, because we all want to see new things and figure out what we can do to support each other in our societies here. So thank you all again for coming this evening. If you have questions, any speakers you would like to suggest for us to find, any topics that you would like to hear about, or more information, please send an email to PACPAL, PACPAL Garden Club at yahoo.com, and we'll be happy to answer you and come up with new and exciting information for everyone to enjoy. So thank you all for joining us and have a great night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.